Good morning. And
Good morning. Hi, Alex. How are you doing?
how is it going? Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. I cannot believe it's already a Monday and we are back
Yes,
at it
same.
again.
I had the same thought this morning. Already money and yet another live stream
Yeah.
after 24 hours of live streaming last week. It was came along again
Yes.
pretty quickly. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, that's true. So
How was
you
your weekend?
yeah, recovered a lot. Did not do much.
Yeah, same here, same here. I took a walk twice because we had snow yesterday, not as much as the
Okay.
US had as such, but at least like a few millimeters that actually stayed on, and so it was nice to walk through the
Okay.
winter
Here it was no snow
part.
here. Yeah.
But now it's all gone already,
Yeah.
so it's
Yeah.
back.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah, and otherwise the world is becoming crazier every day. Um, Yeah, but to really quickly recap notes, so for those of you that missed it, it was really an awesome event. So I have to
Oh yeah.
say, I was a little bit scared with like the 100 talks, 24 hours, 3 tracks, all the time zones, a new platform, and so on, that something would go wrong. But knock on wood, it went through without any hiccups, and everyone had a great time. We had more than 4,000 people attending, and the speakers had a good time. And I think there was a lot of interaction, lots of questions, and so on.
And we have to say again, it was all live. So I mean, I had a couple
Yeah,
of people who didn't
exactly.
believe it.
Yeah.
So nothing was recorded.
So yeah, it was like 100 live streams
Exactly.
in parallel and one after the other
Yeah.
as well. Exactly. And so I spent some time yesterday fighting with the YouTube APIs to upload the videos and set all the metadata and descriptions and everything. I'm not there yet, so the authentication keeps me a little bit entertained. So I spent 3 hours yesterday, but I also uploaded manually in the background, but it's like 100 gigabytes or so of data, so it takes some time
Yeah.
to.
Okay.
Because YouTube, of course, has no way of uploading directly from a Google Drive, right? So it always goes via your computer. So it first has to download it to your computer and then uploads it again. Even if you
Okay.
basically drag and drop Google Drive links onto YouTube, it basically downloads them first and then
I
uploads
see.
them again.
Okay. Yeah. That's probably
Which
because
is
it's different
kind of
systems and
pointless.
they
So I
cannot.
could do it from a Jupyter notebook, but unfortunately, Google YouTube authentication. So I get authenticated to Google Drive, which works. I get authenticated to Google Spreadsheets with all the metadata, but then getting authenticated to YouTube with the authentication in notebooks is a little bit of a tricky
Doesn't
bit.
work.
So I'm still working on that.
Yeah.
But
We
crossing
can
fingers
look
that
at
I
it. I
get
mean, there must be some way to get it over from the recording, and then maybe we can update the meta
Yeah,
information via the API afterwards.
Yeah, so I'm uploading as well, but it takes quite some time because it's so much data,
Yeah.
right? So from that perspective, stay tuned. But we have already, I don't know if you want to share this. So there's a playlist already for.
Yes, I can put the link in the chat, so that's at least
Yeah, we should
a
probably also create a
start.
short link for that as well, I think, right?
Yeah. Let's create it. Here's I posted in chat. John is back. Thank you, John. Really enjoyed Notes. So, John, I saw you watching. Sometime you commented, so it's nice to see you during Notes. It's nice to
From
see
the stream, yeah.
that you're back on Monday with us again. So very good.
Yeah. So let's see if you have.
So yeah, if you click on this link, then you get to a playlist. This playlist is currently what we did stream live as well to YouTube and other channels during Notes. So that means you can see the keynote, you can watch the beginner tracks of all the time zones. So that means you get an American time zone, Asia time zones, and European time zones content for the beginners track. So it's already quite a lot. So that's 7.5 hours each. So obviously includes the keynote 3 times, so you have to deduct that. But still, it's a lot of content with almost no pauses in between. So
sorry for that. I scheduled it really tight to fit all the talks in, but that's probably also lesson learned for next time, that we leave a little bit more room between the talks. I'm not sure as such. So I created I redirected the short link from 2021 to the new videos.
Okay,
I just
cool.
put it into chat as well. So we can later. So we want to put also a video page on neo4j.com where you can basically search and look, filter by tags and stuff like that. So we'll redirect it then later to the neo4j.com page. But for now, at least that's the playlist as such. Right.
Exactly. Yeah, that's perfect. And then we can update that as we go, and then the videos will be there eventually. So it's just like that.
Looking on it, so I promise. So I know that everyone is waiting for the videos, but we had to cut it first because we had one long stream. So kind of cutting and re-rendering them with a quick trailer in front, and then now basically all the uploaded metadata and everything. Yeah. Cool.
Cool. But that's that. So let's. I was almost already in the mood when I launched this one today to say, hey, don't forget to register for notes.
Did you have the slide still in your slide deck?
Exactly. I was seeing, oh, the slide is still there, so I had to quickly go there because obviously this has to go. So I mean, this is again, I think this is the first since a while now, the first proper episode. So I'll I'll show a little bit of what's going on. So you can, if you maybe you watched notes. Sorry, I need a sip of.
Yeah.
Maybe you watched attended notes last week, and you're now thinking, hey, this Neo4j stuff looks kind of cool. I'd like to know more. Then I guess then if you hear, then give us a shout out in the chat. Like to see this. But then I give you a quick summary of what discovering Neo4j AuraDB free with Michael and Alexander is. So we do first a quick recap of what Neo4j AuraDB free is. I'll do that in a second. Then what we usually do is we pick a data set and explore that data set. So if you are sitting on a data set, you think, oh, this is actually fun, this is interesting, this is cool, this is obviously public, right? I mean, it has to be public. You cannot, if it's your private data and you share it with us, then we will make it public. So, I mean, you should not be worried about this being public. But if you have a data set, if you discovered something, if you see something that's interesting, ping us on Twitter, on YouTube, on Discord, on the community forums, wherever you like, and then we can have a look at it, and we can see if we can explore it over the next episodes. We look at the data set in general. We think about the questions, we think about the data model, we create a data model, and then we load and query that data into Neo4j and explore it a little bit. So that's the general plan of these episodes, and we would like to show you basically how quick and easy it works from basically a table to a working graph in an hour. So that's more or less the deal.
Exactly.
And yeah, what is Neo4j AuraDB free? Just quickly, it's the free version of AuraDB. AuraDB is our database as a service offering. It's available to purchase on all the platform, Google Cloud, AWS, and Azure since actually last week. And you have also a free edition. That free edition just needs you to you to register for it, but you don't have to pay for it. It's free forever, and you get slight limitation to 200,000 nodes and 400,000 relationships. But that's as you see in all these episodes we're doing, we never really had a problem with this. Rarely we had a problem with this. Every now and then some data sets are really big, then obviously it doesn't work, but you can always cut it down. This is definitely a good amount of data you can work and explore. You get Neo4j Bloom browser and data importer. You get also the new workspace that we showed last week. So I think that's now in public beta. So you have
so we
the
can update the
chance.
slide actually to go with workspace, right? So that's
exactly. I need to update that. So you have now 2 user experiences depending on your liking. As I said, free forever. If you like to do it to register, if you haven't done so, there is a link. I'll put that link into the chat as well. So you have no excuse not to try it. And today we have Mastodon. So we thought about, okay, what's a cool, interesting data set, and Michael had the idea of, let's see what we can do with Mastodon. What can we do with the data there? How can we explore some stuff there? We did. If you go to Sandbox, you see a couple of Twitter data sets we had there, and we have there to explore. And I think we go into a similar direction today with another social network.
Yep.
So I'll
exactly
switch it over to your screen, Michael.
So hope you can see it. I just had to redo the screen arrangement a little bit, but I hope this works now.
It looks
and
good.
You can see my screen as such. So like many others in the world, I reactivated my Mastodon account that I had for a few years now, and basically it's a federated social network. So it's not like in Twitter where you have one central server which hosts everything, but it's a lot of different servers. I don't know how many there are right now, perhaps like 2,000 or 10,000 or something like that. And each server has its users, and you post to your server, and then people that follow you get your content as well, even if they're on other servers. So some things don't work like as on Twitter. So for instance, you can't search for text across all the instances, or you can't easily see people following you on other servers or things like that. But in general, it's basically behaves very similar to Twitter. There are mobile clients for OS, iOS, and for Android, and it's being continuously developed. Actually, what I want to do at some point is, because it's also open source software, I want to see if you can build on a live stream like a Neo4j backend for Mastodon. So currently it uses Postgres for storage of the of the messaging users and so on. And I wondered if you can actually replace this with Neo4j. So that's something that I perhaps want to try in December to play around with that. Let's see. And so what I did a while ago, 2 weeks ago, I think, before notes, I actually shared, let me see where this is. I shared a tweet and also a message on Mastodon that basically imported the Mastodon public APIs. This one here. The Mastodon public APIs into Neo4j. So I had a bunch of pictures as well, screenshots, so you can see this here. So this is what it looks like, and this is what we want to do today.
Cool.
Right? So similar, like we did it on Twitter several times already in the past. So the graph model is very similar, but getting the data from somewhere else as such. Okay. To start with, we create a new Aura instance. So you might have seen that this changed a little bit. So if you have used Aura before, so this looks now a little bit different. You can one-click create a new database, and there's also a new like start here guide for Neo4j workspace, which you can also switch over here. So, but let's just create an instance, empty instance for the time being. We download our credentials, Mastodon credentials, and say yes here. And then it creates this instance. It's called instance 01, and we can rename this immediately to Mastodon. And while it's creating this instance, we can look at the data model a little bit and the source data. So just one thing here, it currently says open in workspace. If you need to switch between the classic experience and the workspace experience, you can do it in your profile. So here, if I say switch back to classic, I get the 3 buttons, and if I say switch to workspace, then it goes to the single button. So just for you. Okay, when I started to look at this, as with every platform, there are API docs. So for Mastodon, there are actually full API docs as well, even including like posting data, editing data, and so on. So you can actually edit messages, which are called toots on Mastodon. But what we are interested in is the public API endpoint. So where you don't need to log in, you don't need to have an OAuth flow, but you can just access the data directly as such. And so as I mentioned, in Mastodon, we have lots of different servers, and each server basically hosts their own API, right? So if I have, for instance, my own server that has a different public API endpoint than Mastodon Social, for instance, right? And so the main APIs that we want to look at today is the public timeline, which is this one. It's called API v1 timelines public. So for instance, if I go here, I think this is the public timeline, this directory. Yeah, this is the public timeline of Mastodon Social, which is one of the largest Mastodon servers. But if I, for instance, put in mine Chaos Social, then it looks like this, right? So it's basically every server has their public timeline. I make this a little bit bigger. And then like on Twitter, you have the same structure, right? So you have the message basically. So there's a message here, for instance. You have the message with the text of the message, its ID, when it was created, in replies, favorites, favorite count, reply count, and so on. And then you have the user who actually posted this message. Here, again, with an account, their information, and then avatar information. And then they have also other things for additional infos like website, blog, and so on as well. And then we also have tags here. So if the message has text attached or media attachments, then you can see them here as well, right? So from that perspective, that's very similar to the general social network structure. So what we can do in terms of graph model. So even as we don't use, just need to copy my password. Here we are. Downloads, credentials. So let me clear this out. Yes. So we can actually use data importers still for modeling, right? So in previous times we have used arrows, but I thought, why can't we just use data importer for modeling even if you don't use it for import itself? Right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
it's very nice to draw your graph there. It's super easy, and you don't you get a nice picture even if you don't connect a CSV file.
Exactly. Right. So we can have like a message which has an ID, which is a string. Then we have something like a text or so, right?
Yeah.
And then we have something like a favorite count or so, right? So these are, oops, message. So, and then we have favorites, which is an integer, right? So, and then, of course, the user who created this message, which is a user node. And we reverse the relationship direction here of this. And so that's, for instance, a posted message. And the user, again, has an ID and a name and so on, right? The usual things as such. And the other thing that the message has is text. So we have, we just saw that there's an entry for text. And tags have basically names as such. Name. And so what's interesting in Mastodon, the tags are like per instance. So You can actually, there's an API also for tags where you can filter for tag names. So for instance, if I search for something like say like snow or something, right? Then I would see all the snow related messages on that server as such, right? So that's the way of how you can search on Mastodon, is basically by tags, not so much by free text as such. So the tags are also important. And we say this is tagged with this tag. And then a message can, so if we model it like this, we have here another message. Then a message can basically reply to another message, and so that's the base model. I think I have not replied to. So that's kind of the basics of our model, right? So you can add more things here, but that's kind of the basic model that you're looking at as such, right? And so from the data from the public API endpoint, we can fetch the information about message, its tags, and then connect the user who posted that. So that's kind of our basic setup, right? And how we do this is we basically take the API endpoint response. So you also see it here in the public. By the way, you can also add a limit. So if you're just playing around and you want to have just a few messages, limit equals 5 also, then it only fetches a few.
Right?
It's
not so much.
So for instance, here's one which has also a lot of additional information like tags. So you see like all these tags that have an URL and then also a name as well. But this URL is kind of different on each server.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask: so is this unique to this server? So if I'm on a different,
it's kind of unique to the server, right? So
Okay.
it could be that the same tag is with the same name on another server has a different meaning or something like that, right? So but that's what they refer to the tag on the server, but they are kind of pulled together by the same name on the outside. Right? Okay, that means basically in Neo4j Cypher, what we do, we fetch the data from. Let's start by fetching the data from the timeline. So I just copy and paste this URL, and I call epoch. So epoch is our procedure library, and so if I can just call this value, so I call this API endpoint and get the responses back from the API. So you see it looks exactly like the thing that we just saw here in the endpoint itself, right? And now we can use this data. Now this is kind of Cypher data, right? So whatever is in value, we can now use and to work with it as such. So for instance, if I just want to return keys of value, then I would see like the keys of each entry, right? So you see basically all the things that we looked at before are the keys. And I can also limit this. I can also say limit 2, or so then it would only return 2. So it's real Cypher data. So I can also say a value of, let's say, created at, or value dot contents is probably too long, URI. And then you see I can just access this data. And this is actually also ISO date, so we can use Neo4j datetime for this and so on, right? So we can basically easily use this data now to create our message. And I already had put this into a GitHub repo, so I can actually put this link into chat as well, if you want to follow along. Oh, no, that was mine. And so we can basically just look at the Cypher script here to have a look. By the way, good news, GitHub added Cypher support, actually, Cypher highlighting. So we see a little bit of this here. So it's not fully highlighted, but at least some of it is now highlighted. So
That's super good. Yeah.
So getting there.
Yeah.
Getting there.
That's
So the simple things we can just copy out here from here. So we have our data, and then we just get our value as v, and then we create our new message from the ID, and then set the other information like sensitive language URI, replies counts, favorite counts, and content, and the created at value as well, right? So that's pretty straightforward. We run this and it creates 5 nodes. And if you want to see them, we can just click on the nodes and they have now our data here. And if we change this to, for instance, let's say not language, content. So you see that each of them has different content here, including some Chinese, sorry, content as well. Right, and this creates it for 5 because we limited it here to 5 nodes as such, right?
Yeah.
And the next step would be to add the user who created this. So we have our user account, and we set our information for the user. This looks a little bit so we can start out easy, and then we can look at what all the other things are. Let's do this first.
Yep.
So we create just the user, the account. Oops, sorry, didn't copy it. We just create a user here. So based on the account as such. So there's an ACCT account, ACCT. So which is basically the unique name of the user. That's kind of the username, and that's the server name as such. Right. Because these IDs are actually per server, so you can't guarantee that. So I read this in the API docs that these API IDs are per server. So you are safer going with the account thing because that's kind of username on the server plus the server itself. So it looks like an email address, but it's actually in Mastodon. Mastodon user
okay.
ID.
Yeah.
So we create the user by account. And which reminds me, I forgot something. We hadn't created any constraints yet, so let's do this first. So we created constraint for message by ID, user by account, and tag by name, right? So that's pretty straightforward. And Workspace now supports also multi-statement as well, which is nice. And you see basically these statements being executed. So we create our user by account, set all these attributes like ID, log, bot, is it discoverable, avatar, URL, follow account, and so on. We created it and the last status, so when did they last posted. And then we basically say user posted message, right? So we create a user and connect the user to the message as such.
Yep.
Okay. So we do this and it creates a few more nodes, and now we basically see our first users having posted their messages, and we switch this from user, where is account there, to the account. So we see basically the little account names here. I don't know why it's showing yellow. Yeah, something is a little bit wrong. Just take a screenshot for our product team. Okay, so you see it's basically the user account and they tweet or the message that they posted as such, right?
Yep.
So then the next thing is, so we can of course do this for more. So if you say limit 100, then it would create a few more nodes, and now we have a little bit more data in our graph, and we can basically look at this. So we should be seeing if someone posted two things, then there should be already 2 relationships, but so far everyone just posted one as such, right? In the first 100 public timeline.
Yeah.
Which is also obvious, right? So because that's pretty quickly turn around, so it's You have to be a bot, I guess, to post two messages per second or something like that. Right? Okay, so that's this information. But then I also mentioned that the users also have this extra information. They have like extra what they call fields here, where they can put in like their blog, their LinkedIn, their Twitter, their GitHub, or whatever. And so I fetched a bunch of them and added them to the user as attributes as well, so that we get some more like social information on the users too. And this works like this because this is an array basically here. So we have to go over this array and fetch out each thing by name basically, right? So we iterate over all entries in this field, and then the field that says, for instance, LinkedIn or Twitter or GitHub, we fetch this one field, and then from this one field we grab the value and remove all this HTML stuff, and then only grab the URL here because that's the only thing that we're interested in, right? And that's why it looks a little bit more complicated than it needs to be. But I'll show this on one example, and then we can copy and paste the other ones. Let's look here. I'll just close this really quick. Here. So we go basically over this fields that I said, where f.name equals Twitter, right? So that's basically fetches out this field with a certain name. And then we basically grab from the href field in the response whatever follows the href with double quotes up until the next double quote, basically. So we grab the text that comes after href equals, which is this one here, right? And then basically fetch everything up to the next double quote, and that's the value that we want to get out of this. So, and this is basically the first match, second, so not the full match, but the first group, basically. So that's what we get here. So this is this thing. And then because this gets us a list back, if we get just the first element. So I could also have said, say, head here or something like that. Right? That have also worked. And so the first element of this one element list. So it's a one element list or 0 element list. If there's no Twitter entry, then there's no element, and we just get null back. Right? So if I run this again, it should probably set a bunch of properties. So on some of the users, we should now have something like a Twitter field, basically, right? So it set this on a few of the nodes. And the same we can do with some other attributes here. So I had, for instance, pronouns, website, GitHub, Reddit, location, language, or support, or such, right? If you have more than one thing that you want to pull together into one, you can just say also where name in, and then give it a list, and then it basically takes this list as such, right? So this is this part. So now we have our full user information. Right, so let's see a few more. So we should now also see on the other side here the other things popping up. And now the last thing that we have not used yet is the tags. And the tags is going over the list of tags in the value, and then creating the tag based on name. Actually, because I want to pull them together, right? I don't want to use the URL as such, because then I would get on the different servers different tags, but I want to use the same tag name and connect them as such. And I do this here with a subquery. So I could have used for each, but this is a subquery that basically pick our value and the message, and then we iterate over the tags here, if there are any, because it could be there are no tags at all. Create a tag and connect the tag to a message, and then we return the count, so which is 0, 1, or 10, or whatever, as such. Right? So if I run this again, now it should return. So it should now also have a bunch of tags here. So for instance, here we have love wins, and then we have one tweet with this, and or Iran protests another one, right? And COP27, right? So we have different tags here in our list now. And if we fetch this across different servers or across different timelines, then we have more messages attached to the text as well. Cool. And the last bit is if there's a reply to in a message, we add this as well. So let's do this. Here. So I'm not sure how many replies. So there are only 4 replies now. Well, our 100 entries as such. Right?
Okay. No,
so, but if you look at reply to, then we have here things that are basic replies as such. Right? Okay. And because this gives us only 100 elements, what I also did, I just paginated through this. So there's also a skip attribute. And then you can basically, with skip limit on the URL, you can fetch multiple pages with data. And then I have here an unwind over this whole list and then iterate over that as such. I'm not sure if the query already implements the auto thing. Don't think so. Let's see what happens here. Otherwise, you can also switch back to the classic experience, and something seems to work. So let's see if we get more nodes here now. So that's basically going over 100 pages here with 40 per page, and then using the skip limit with 40 as a limit. Yeah.
But you only see the ones in this particular server still. So that's what we
exactly. So if you want to have another server, we would have to. So for instance, if I do the same with my own server, or not my own, the server that I'm on, I would do this, and then it would create basically. You just change the server name, right? So there's also Mastodon online, I think. Mastodon, if I can type. Right, and then if I use this, then I get even more.
I see. Yeah.
And actually, there's also an API. Good that you say that, Alex. So if I use Mastodon online, it creates another 1,000 nodes. So it went over all our data here and created 500 nodes and added all these labels. So we should have now also more tags. And then if you click on each of them, we should also say more results, hopefully. Perhaps you can just return text as have more, where count of n is greater than, let's say, 3. Okay, these should at least have 1, 2, such, right? So you basically see. This is, by the way, the new syntax, how you would do like count degrees, get degrees of nodes. So you say count with curly braces and then put in the pattern here as such. So you can also have more complex patterns in here and so on. So that's basically the same as the exists thing. And this is with count. Just for those of you that have been around for a while, so in the old days, we used to say their size as a function and then pass in the pattern to the size function. But this count is the new syntax for that.
I see. Okay.
Just as a reminder. But good that you said the instances thing. So Alex, we could also just ask the API for all the instances, right? So so if I search for comma here, I see that there are 33,000 instances for Mastodon.
Okay.
I know. And that are connected. Are more that are connected to Mastodon Social, but it's like a peer network, right? So like peer-to-peer social network. And And so if you wanted to, you could also iterate over this list and fetch the public timeline from all of them basically and create our own little Fediverse here as well. So I could also say, instead of iterating over pages in our workspace query that I have here, I can also say call epoch load JSON yield value return count star should give us 33,000 as well. Oh no, what's it called? Yes, isn't it an array? It's an array. Why doesn't I get yield value unwind value as server. Only get one result. Mastodon social. Oh, perhaps because of the double. See what we get back here. Oh, there's a result in there. Why does it return? Did I not see? Oh, this was it's weird, right? So because I just here's and here I get an array back, and in the other URL call I get actually an result entry back. Okay, good to know. So basically unwind value dot result as server return constant. Right?
Okay.
So what we could do now is basically take this and iterate over this list instead of iterating over the pages. So we could actually do both, but to not overdo it a little bit, we can basically say for each server we put in the server name in here. Server, and let's perhaps take only like 100 servers or so.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
With server limit 100. So we pass in our server, and then we basically need to put in skip. Let's say just take the first 100 entries from each server or something like that, right? So this should give us 100 times 110,000 entries. Oh no, we don't have an host name lookup here. Okay, so epoch load JSON, if you have a parameter for failed operations that you can skip failed operations, but I can't remember the syntax, so we just fail on error false, right? And so if you put this in, it should hopefully here fail on error false, and entry here. Pass, JSON pass. Okay. This needs to be null. And then our config, which can also have other things, but also fail on error. So let's cross fingers. And it complained about HTTP response codes. But it should actually capture that. Okay. Probably something we need to fix. But it fetched at least things from 2 servers now as such, so because it did another transaction. So it's something that we need to fix in Epoch, basically, that it also does HTTP 422 URLs correctly. But that's kind of how you would do it. You can iterate over the servers and then fetch the data from there. Right. I can probably also skip to it and also see. No. So there's another lazy bear. So they are obviously not sorted by availability or something like that. So you have to check this yourself.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So I think the first few are actually not running right now.
Yeah.
So that's also
the
point of the federated thing is basically
exactly.
Don't know if it's there or not, right? So it might be running, it might not be running, or other things as well, right?
Yeah.
Or you get funny errors from things like.
Exactly.
But it's also more resilient, right? So basically, you can also create an account on multiple servers, and then you can also move between servers. But if one server goes down, doesn't mean that the whole system goes down. It's just a little part of the system that goes down, which is kind of a nice aspect of that, right? So it's not like the Twitter fail whale, which we'll probably see more often now.
Maybe. Yeah.
Now that no one is there anymore to maintain the systems, and everyone busy with Elon's rewrite, the 20 or so remaining Twitter engineers out of 7,000. But that's at least one aspect where you basically the system as a whole is more resilient as such. Okay, I quickly want to look at two other APIs from here. So one is we can fetch tags as well. So what I did here in this one is basically we go over all the tags that we have in our system and fetch the name, and then fetch from Mastodon Social the other tags with the other messages with this tag as well.
Okay.
So, right. So we basically do exactly the same as we had before, only that we don't fetch the public timeline, but we fetch it per tag as such, right? So basically, we find all our tags, and we can actually do this here, return key.name 20. So these are our tag names, right?
Yep.
And what we would do is we take these tag names and append them to this URL, and then we get, let's say, if I get here Mastodon Social and Windows for giggles, right? Then I get all the messages with Windows on that, right? And on there as a tag, right?
Yep.
And that's what I can use to basically enrich my data, not just the public timeline, but also what else was posted with the same text as the public timeline has, as such, right? And so the other code is all exactly the same. We create a message, we create a user, connect the user, create the other tags, and do reply tours as well. So I can do this, and then it basically fetches the data for all the tags, which is probably now a lot. Now that I think
now
about
that we created so many, yeah.
Now that we created so many, let me just see how many tags we have. We might also run into API limits at some point, 2,000 tags. So it's probably getting a lot, right? So there's also API limits. So if you have, I think, like 1,000 requests per day or something like that on the public non-authorized API or so.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. So, but there's definitely so it can do this in the background. That's one thing, and then the other thing that we can do is basically each server also has a public directory, right? So if we look at this URL for the server, let's say limit equals 10. Oops. Then we get like the users that are on the server, right? So we also have like a user directory per server. So each
okay.
we can ask each server for their users, and then for each user can ask them for their message. So you can also build up this network as you want as well, right? So you don't have to just rely what are the last active things from the timeline. You can also filter the users by, I don't know, when they were created, or if they're bots, or if their language, or other things as well. And so that's also something that you can do, and that's another API that I was playing around with here, just fetching a bunch of users from the APIs as well. So we can do the same here. So this is also going over the skip limit. So if oh no, it finished. 15,000 nodes created, 20,000 relationships. So our graph is growing. So we can actually have a look at, let's see, I just recreate the perspective here. Okay. So we can actually call this Mastodon. And now in Explore, which is the new name for Bloom, we can do things, for instance, message tag message. So we basically can see shared text between messages, right? So you basically see, okay, here are certain messages that are have more than one response here as well, right? So because we just fetched the text, so that's actually quite nice. And you also see little networks where people tag things with the same text as well, right? So online radio, web radio, now playing, this is kind of music sharing, right? And these are all like bot tagged messages as well, right? And then we have other things like electronics or accessibility and so on. And then we could expand here, for instance, for the other tags of this. And then we see also overlaps between those. Let me zoom in a little bit, right? So you see Arduino macro, electronics, Arduino cloud, and so on is tagged with electronics as well. Right? And we can see, okay, what else is there in text with Arduino, and then we see other messages as well. So we can explore our data already as a visual graph as well. And you see these kind of clusters forming too. And we could do the same with users. So if you want to also pull into users, then it would also fetch in the users that posted these as well.
Yeah.
Right.
I think you ran already into limitations, I think.
That could
1,000
be
nodes render limitation.
Yeah, let me see. I'm not sure if Bloom in or Explore in Workspace actually has the configuration already. But yeah, so what I could also say, I can also select all the messages, all the 12,000 messages, and then say right click and then expand to posted. And then it should basically fetch them as well. Something that I learned just a few days ago is that they're actually pulsing. So all the nodes that you expand in Bloom are, while it's loading, they're all like pulsing. Like
yes, I see it now. You need to.
Can you see that a little bit? Which is kind of
very
funny.
faint. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very faint, but it's kind of nice to see. Now we see the users coming in. Right? So you see like the blue ones are all the users as such. So it definitely gets dense, right? And then you can expand further on, right? So
then there's a lonely little cluster up there that is
exactly, because we did it by tag, right? So we can basically here we should be able to just select this cluster, and then let me unselect everything, and then we can select this cluster, and we could, I think, can we zoom into this? No, it zooms into all. But what we can do is we can say dismiss others, and that leaves us only with this cluster. And then we can basically investigate what cluster is this. And good that you pointed this out. This is one about the Iran protests, which is
good.
Something that needs to get visibility because the Iranian government is doing cruel things with their citizens and also limiting media as well. So if you can amplify the protests of the people in Iran, then please do. Exactly. So, and these were the APIs I said I looked at. There are a few more public APIs, but these were the most important ones that I wanted to look at, right? So you basically can then basically go also to an ID of an account. So if you want to do something like that, so if you go to accounts ID, so imagine we picked one account like this one here, and then we would go to duplicate tab. Accounts, and then this ID should give us accounts ID. This gives us like the user themselves as well. And then I think you can go to statuses, and then this is then the is it here? Then like all the messages from this account, right?
Okay.
So that's something actually I wonder if for my account. Where's mine here? This is my ID. If I go to social, my ID, for whatever reason, I didn't find it. Anyway, so that's kind of how you. Oh no, sorry, that's that's not my ID. That's the
post, yeah.
the post ID. I'm actually not sure how to quickly get my ID here, but that's somewhere in here, right, in the web page or in the account data. There's also the ID. They should actually show the ID. That would be good. Actually, I'm not sure if you can actually put in your name just as such, but I don't think so. Oh, can you? No. But you can basically find it by name, I think, as such as well. But there's more in the docs, so I only played around a little bit with it. But you can also other things from a status. You can also get predecessors and descendants from a message, for instance, which is like gives you a thread as well. You can fetch polls and so on. So there's much more information there as well, right? Also trends. We hadn't looked at trends. That's also another API endpoint.
Yeah.
So there could be a full, like much more detail on here as such. Right? And then when you have the data in Neo4j, you can, besides visualizing it, of course, you can also say, for instance, what are, for instance, co-occurrences of text, right? So let's say if you have something like our two tags here, tag 1 and tag 2, and we have messages that are connected to these two tags, right? So this is a message in here. And then we want to see t1.name, t2.name. How often did they, and the count as frequency. This is a typical kind of co-occurrence, query order by frequency, descending limit 20. And then we say also where ID of T1 is greater than or less than ID of T2, so that we don't get duplicates and stuff like that. And we only look at half the data, basically. But you see already nature and photography makes sense. Yeah. Photography and arts, infosec, cybersecurity makes sense. Sovietsky and Milt. My Russian is not good enough anymore to translate it. This Russian or Sovietsky, but this is Multfilm. I have no idea. Multfilm, perhaps? Film? This is film?
Yeah. Sorry, I cannot help in this.
So basically, Bitcoin, BTC price. And so you see kind of these are sensible correlations. And then we could, for instance, create a correlation relationship with the frequency, right? So we could say basically, instead of returning this, we could say we take T1 and T2 and say where frequency is greater than, let's say, 5, right? And then we basically merge a relationship between them similar or something like that, right? Similar. T2 on create set s dot count equals frequency. We get this frequency from here, and then we basically set this as a sorry, this needs to be a width. So we aggregate the two tags and the count, filter all the ones out that have a frequency greater than 5 or greater equal to 5. And then it creates 600 relationships. So we now have like similar tags. And we see even little clusters popping up here. Let's see FTX Bitcoin cluster, metal concert clusters, calligraphy. Here are our Russian ones, Linux and open source. Art Deco photography and so on, right? So if we say perhaps greater than 3, we get a few more relationships here. And then you see these kind of clusters appearing as such.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so we have, let's see if you can zoom in a little bit here. Introduction, psychology, medicine, reading, research, ADHD, that's kind of my topic, photographies, landscape creeks, and so on. Cybersecurity, MITRE, hacking, Blue Team, InfoSec is also a good one. And they're all coming from introduction. So there's this introduction message that you are supposed to send when you start with an account. And this is kind of coming from people's introductions, which is actually quite nice. Right, so we can basically these are all the introduction messages that we fetch from some of the different instances and so on. So now we had 16,000 nodes, and so that means we could at least go 10 times as much on AuraDB free to play around with the data, right? And so we should be able to pull in like all the Mastodon data because into Neo4j, because Mastodon only has like 6 million users now and perhaps like 100 million messages or something like that. So that's something that you can even on an Aura instance, you can just grab one of the larger Aura instances and pull everything in that's currently on Mastodon. Right. And then you have a nice social network to analyze.
Cool.
So,
we have 2 questions I'd like to quickly go over. So Bernard asks, how do I move to another Neo4j instance? He has outgrown his AuraDB free, I assume. And then what you do is you basically go to your instance view, and then you can exactly click here, clone to new, and then you pick if you are in the DB or DS world, and then pick DB, and then here you have the instance size selector. So you can pick whatever whatever you need, how many gigabytes of RAM, how many CPUs, how much storage, and you can always go up and down. So you can initially start with the smallest one at the very top, and if you see this is not enough, then you can always increase this from to your needs.
Yeah, exactly. You can also, if you want to, you can also take a snapshot here and then re-import the snapshot to another database. So that's also a way if you already have a database that you want to continue to reuse and don't want to change the connection details and connection URLs and things like that, then you can also take a snapshot and import into that. But there's also clone to existing, so I can also take this one and then clone it to an existing one, basically. Then I can select one of my other Neo4j 5 instances, and then by the way, we're running on Neo4j 5 already, right? So this is kind of here on Neo4j 5. Right, so that's also an option to clone to existing database as well.
Yeah. So that's where you can do it. And then the other question from Lenny, and it's difficult to question, right? How much time will it take to learn Neo4j? So I mean, depends on your existing knowledge. If you have worked with databases before, if you are, let's say you are an SQL expert, it's gonna take you less time than if you are completely new to the world of databases. So and if you are very good in one of the supported drivers like Java or Python, it's also going to be easier. But if you start from completely zero, this is the way I think that Michael just showed. There's the Graph Academy pages where you go from fundamentals to Cypher fundamentals to data modeling to importing, and that's kind of like the workshop and training sessions that take a couple of hours each, and then you do them on and on, and then you are getting more what's the word, getting better at it, learn more, and this actually these episodes here are probably best to try and to learn new things. So basically we always publish everything, so you can pick any of our previous episodes, you can check out the code, and you can use the data yourself, and and load it into your Aura free instances. So that's
Exactly.
a good way to learn.
Yeah, so perhaps you should share the link to our Discover AuraDB free
Oh, yes, I can do that.
example, the video page with all the existing videos. This one here. And then Graph Academy really allows you to self-pace your learning, right? So for the Neo4j fundamentals, it's roughly 1 hour each. And then from there, you can either go into learning more Cypher or data modeling or data import, or you can actually go into app development. So you can basically, we have also courses how to build applications with .NET, Java, Go, Python, JavaScript, TypeScript, and so on. GraphQL is coming really soon, and so on. So that's also something then, depending if you're more like the data scientist who has other courses, or more a developer wants to build an app on top of it as well. But first, taking the 2 1-hour fundamentals courses it's really good, and then from there you can decide where to go.
Yeah.
As such, right? And thank you for helping me read the Russian Lenny. So it's Multfilm. So
yeah.
sorry for that.
Okay.
Cool. So we covered a lot of stuff today, and
yeah.
This was fun.
I hope you enjoyed it as well. So this is the end of today's episode. So just to give you a short outlook, what's coming this week. So on Wednesday, Will and I, we are going to look at chapter 2 of the Full Stack GraphQL application book. It's going to be a late episode for European time, so 10 p.m. Central European time. Unfortunately, didn't fit otherwise into the schedules. But that's this Wednesday here on YouTube, Twitch, and LinkedIn, as well as Twitter. And I'm looking forward to speaking to you there if you are interested in GraphQL. And if not, Michael and I will be back next week.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. All right. Well then.
Cool.
Have a
Thanks
good.
a lot, Alex, and thank you everyone for watching.
Exactly. Thank you for watching. Take care. See you on the community pages or on Wednesday.
Cool. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.